So today we are joined by Jay Howard and Piotr Rusinek, the super chats from Hammered. As you know, they are Property Sister favourites of ours. And this chat has come up because of a clubhouse room that the guys run on a Tuesday evening, specifically kind of on auctions and trading. And the favourite topic of mine, right, about red flags came up, and in specifically related to auctions, and it's kind of slightly different. So we thought it would be a really good opportunity to talk about the red flags in auctions, because they're not always obvious, and that will help keep you safe and keep your money in your pocket. And yeah, so guys, over to you.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what we're talking about on that particular chart. I remember some of the red flags. I mean, the number one thing is when we look at properties in the auctions, we like always try to start with looking at the history of the street. Like if we see that property's been in the auction 5 times in the last 3 years, it's a potential red flag, like fairly big one. And if the property has never been to an auction, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's look at it further. Number 2 thing that we do as our kind of process is we look at special conditions, and we look at what are the extra fees that you need to pay, what are the things that the seller is indemnifying themselves from, and what are the things that they don't want to take responsibility for. So these are the kind of, you can find some red flags in the special conditions. And then number 3 red flag, I think it's some missing documents in the legal part. Things like tenancy documents, things like, I don't know, certificates, building back certificates, planning permissions. Those are not really red flags. Those are amber flags that mean proceed with caution. You can make money if you solve some problems. That's what the amber flag means.
Super. We have a whole rainbow of flags, huh?
So I think for me, my three major red flags are based around timing. So if I see a lot that's just been bought pre-auction in a regional auction, and it is put in as a late lot into a subsequent maybe national or London auction, that's a red flag for me. Especially if you're more of a retail kind of buyer, you know, if you don't know trading and you're looking to get some form of traditional style funding, or you're leveraging one property to secure this, you know, that can really throw up some issues for you. The other thing is the timing of the legal pack. Now, if you get all of the required documents in and they're all there a week before the auction, and then the morning of the auction or whilst the auction is taking place, a couple of documents are changed out, that's a big red flag. That tells me stop bidding, step back, move away, because it's likely that they're changing special conditions last minute, or they're putting in a report that they didn't want you to have sight of, in where you could actually, you know, do your work properly. The only exceptions to that really are like searches, because searches can take ages to come in. So if a search comes in last minute, that's fine, because you can go through a search, you know, in a quick amount of time and still be able to make an informed decision. The other thing around timing for me is, you know, access. You know, how many times are they allowing access? Are they doing it to, you know, certain times in the week or during the day? You know, it's actually quite preclusive. You know, timing, you have to kind of, you're restricting the amount of buyers who can take that time off work at, you know, 10:30 or at 2:30, you know, in those middle sections of the day where it's far enough from the start of the day and far enough from the end of the day and far enough from lunchtime, where it's almost prohibitive. And it's, you know, they then post everything online, like videos and pictures, but you don't get the opportunity to view. So, you know, if you're a part-time investor who has a day job, or, you know, they're running meetings throughout the day, you know, if there are no weekend viewings, or, you know, no morning or, you know, early evening viewings, then I always see that as something that's like, well, as a seller, would you really want those timings? You know, because you want to kind of get as many people through the door.
I think that point's a bit exaggerated. As long as there are viewings, you're looking to buy 100, 250, 500K property, you need to find time.
Yeah, of course. But then there's
the most important thing is to put yourself in a position where, like, you act like a professional, and yeah.
I was going to extend the point. Your points are always welcome, Piotr. I was going to extend the point by also saying, the properties that have no viewings at all, those are problematic. That's probably the real crux of it. But yeah, the points about timing for me, I always think, depending on what type of asset it is, it can have a little bit of an impact. But by and large, if there's no viewings at all, and there's no structural, so if there's no perceived reason for there being no viewings, then I think there's a problem there. So if they say, look, there's structural issues, we're not allowing access, or it's tenanted and the tenants are elderly or unwell, and through COVID, no access.
Yeah.
You get it. And other things like it's an HMO, and the HMO rooms are filled, and only 3 of the HMO rooms are available to view because the other 3 are sleeping during the day. Maybe they work shifts. It all comes down to applying the flags to the situation as well. So it's not like a one rule fits all.
Yeah, and I suppose it's, you can have something that looks like an amber or a red flag, and that on its own maybe is okay. But when other things start to kind of add up, normally these red flags don't come as just one on their own, do they? Normally it's a series of things, and when you start to build up that picture and there's more and more, then that's when the alarm bells should really start going.
Yeah, if there's 1 or 2, and the situation allows for it, like we mentioned, there's a couple of scenarios where actually they're not red flags, it's situational.
Yeah.
Then it is what it is, and you have to make your decision accordingly. But if there are multiple amber and red flags that are compounding on each other, then you have to think, right, okay, there's something going on here, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to figure out what it is, take it into consideration, and if you're happy, continue to bid. Like Piotr says, it's a professional marketplace.
Absolutely, and as you say, it doesn't mean you rule it out. It just means you reflect that accordingly in your price. Sorry, Piotr, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Everything depends on the price. If we're looking at buying a 500k house and it's got a lot of red flags, but we can buy it for 50k, I think we would do it. I think I could convince them to do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't need too much convincing, in fairness. We do love one of those. We like to get buried in the problems. And the most part is we're pretty savvy, I think. So most of it we can divinate from what the red flags are, and we can already put plans in place. And realistically, that's almost how you need to treat auctions. There's not always going to be something intrinsically wrong with it.
Yeah.
But you need to be figuring out where the hurdles are likely to be, and then just put a plan in place, and then a backup plan in place, and then a backup plan in place. It really is. It's a valid marketplace, but I think the way that most people interact with it isn't valid.
Yes.
So it's just one of those things. But any more red flags you can think of, Piotr?
I would say a red flag can be not so much to do with the property, but with the person looking to buy the property. Like if they are really motivated to buy, they would probably should look in the mirror and look at themselves as a super red flag, because auctions are a place where there's lots of transactions. You cannot be desperate to buy one property. If you're like super desperate, you're taking too many risks, and you thinking of scenarios that are very conditional and pricing the bidding on those conditions, like, it's probably a red flag for you. You shouldn't be looking at the auction, or you should get some help from professional investors to help you with pricing the property. So not everything is to do with the property and the sellers. A lot of the red flags come from buyers themselves and the way they behave. So it's should be proportionate.
I think that's a really excellent point, that you have to go into these things, especially auctions, any property investment, but especially auctions, with the blinkers off, with your eyes wide open, not set on a kind of definite goal and you will get this come hell or high water, because that's where you say people get into trouble because their emotions carry them away. So a really, really great point.
I also think that some auctioneers and the way that they do things, sometimes there are red flags there as well. They're like, when you know you're looking at a property where, you know, the bricks and mortar basic, you know, just buy it and then relet it, single let, you know, very, very vanilla. If that is worth like 150 and, you know, there's a full legal pack, there's no real red flags and they've got it in at 50, then you know it's probably going to sell closer to 200, right? And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that. But again, removing the blinkers, you need to be aware, you know, because a lot of people, you know, they'll see an asset like that and maybe they'll use multi-let, or maybe they'll do title splitting, or maybe they'll do something that adds the value. But there are some auctioneers that take, you know, the guide reserve level and, you know, they make it they almost create like an unfair marketing disadvantage. But there are some auctioneers that, you know, they price it right and it sells well. But there are some where they create probably an unnecessary kind of disadvantage, or, you know, almost a misrepresentation of value.
Yeah.
Although the guide and reserve is no indication of value, but a lot of people get tied up into that. So if you're trying to be a savvy buyer, as well as, you know, also in that respect being a savvy seller, I heard Piotr was talking at an event this morning, and someone was like, "Oh, I went to blah blah auction house or auctioneer, and they convinced me to put it in at this price, far below what I paid for it, and the reserve was there." So the risk is far higher to the seller in those scenarios, but they got a good price. And really, that is the nature of the game. But being aware of that nature actually makes it far easier for you to kind of like transverse it. You know, so you find yourself not wasting so much time on the vanilla bits and maybe looking for the stuff that needs work and has problems, and where you can solve and add value and do things like that. But yeah, there are some auctioneers that do it in a I would say a classy way, and some who don't do it in a classy way. That may not be a red flag, that just may be a bit of advice or an opinion, just an opinion.
Well, that's super, guys. So much value there. There are definitely things to look out for. There are definitely things to see kind of what's missing, so things that aren't there. And as well, you know, as we often talk about, particularly in your clubhouse room, you know, you need to be aware of yourself, self-awareness there, and your own motivations. So really hope you've found this of use. We're going to put the guys' Hammered link in the comments below. Check out their book, because, you know, as we're talking about, this is strategy, and this is, you know, almost a game. There we go. Before the hammer falls. Super book. It really is. Check that out. And I'm sure we'll be with the guys again with an update on auctions really soon. Thanks, chats.
Cheers, Helen. Thank you.
Pleasure speaking to you.